Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin DeVille. I'm Managing Director at Receptional. Just checking that everyone can hear me, and we'll get started in just a second. I'm really excited to be here today and to be presenting. This is the first in a series of webinars that we're going to be running at Receptional, and today we're going to be talking about how to create and promote a successful YouTube campaign. Of course, as this is the first webinar, you're a record audience, so thank you very much for attending today. I can see there's actually quite a lot of you have logged in already. But I'll carry on just chatting for a couple of minutes to give people who are kind of latecomers a chance to log in. It's worth saying, of course, that we're going to be recording the webinar, and a recording will be sent through to you. So please, by all means, take notes as we go through, but you'll get a full recording of the webinar, which you can share with anyone else in your businesses as you want to. And what I would say is do take the advantage of the fact that you're here today to ask any questions. We've got two companies presenting today, fantastic experts from each company. And it's a chance to ask your questions. So if, as we're going through, anything is unclear or you're unsure about it, then you can ping a question in the chat box on the right-hand side. And sitting alongside me is my colleague, Alan. He has the wonderful name of Al Green. So it's very difficult to forget. So if you send any questions through to him, he will collate them all during the course of the webinar, and we'll answer all of those questions together at the end. And I'll put them to whichever expert is appropriate. And if you forget Al Green's name, then you can always send them through to me, and I will deal with them as well in the chat box, which is at the bottom on the right-hand side of your screen. What we'll also be doing is running a couple of polls during the course of the webinar. And what I want to do is just kind of test that now. So I think polls are a great way of kind of finding out a bit about your peers. This is such a new area that it's good to know what everyone else is doing. So what I'm going to do now is launch a poll. And the screen tells me that the poll's distributing at the moment. So if we could just practice, and if you could all just complete that poll. And what I'm asking is, what experience do you have of running video advertising campaigns? And that maybe there's lots of business who haven't done much in the way of video, and that's perfectly well and good and expected. And then there'll be some of you, I suspect, who are kind of running video more regularly. But if you can complete that poll now, that would be great. And I will share you with the results with you in a second. And I can see you're completing it. And there's a good mixture of experience within the room. So if we could just complete that now. I can see that most of you now voted, so I'll just give it 5 more seconds, and then I will close that poll and share the results with you. There we go. I think we're close. And I will close that poll and share the results. And hopefully you can see there the results, and there's just over a third of you don't have any experience of running video campaigns. So I think the webinar today should be very useful, and then most of the rest of you are kind of running campaigns more regularly, but for almost no one's 4% of people are responding and saying that video is a key channel. So hopefully there'll be something in today's webinar for all of you. So I will close that poll, and thank you very much for responding so quickly there. And so on to today's speakers. So we've got 2 businesses that are speaking today. There's first of all, we've got Matthew Francis and Marlon Griffin from Fall Off the Wall. They are a creative content agency, and they work with some of the UK's biggest brands, creating videos for them. And so they're going to be talking about how to create a killer marketing video. And then my colleague, Matt, who has worked at Receptional for many, many years and has got some fantastic experience, will be talking about the ultimate guide to promoting your business on YouTube. And I think there's some fantastic content coming up. So I'm going to stop talking, and I am going to hand you over to Matthew and to Marlon. And I will just make you presenters now, Matthew. There we go. And I can see your screens coming up now. And what I will do is unmute you so that we can all hear you as well. So Matthew, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for that, Justin.
Excellent.
Okay.
I can see your slides now. So over to you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So, okay, let me quickly introduce ourselves to you all. So my name's Matthew Francis. I'm the commercial director at Fall Off the Wall, and I'm joined by my colleague Marlon Griffin, our creative director, who you'll hear from a little later on. So, who are Fall Off the Wall? Well, we're a 360 creative content agency, as Justin touched on there, and we concentrate almost entirely on ensuring that each and every piece of content we create, produce, and deliver engages in one form or another with its desired and more often than not specifically targeted audience. We want to create an emotive response in people and in turn generate a physical response, a physical reaction to what we've put in front of them. We aim to be disruptive and to resonate. Disrupt in a way which surprises, breaks the norm, and is unique in its methods. And to resonate, I guess, in a way which means whatever we're communicating, that it remains relatable, interesting, and engaging. Most importantly, we aim to generate a response which is measurable and evergreen wherever possible. We've got a short amount of time with you today, so we're going to touch on just two key pillars of effective video content. We're going to talk about how to maximize your content, getting the most out of the assets and the creative at your disposal. But first, Marlon will discuss with you crafting the cut through and how to stand out in a congested and noisy world. So I'll pass you over to Marlon now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marlon Griffin, Fall Off the Wall's creative director. Thanks for that, Matt. Firstly, Fall Off the Wall's history has been built crafting effective, hard-working direct response advertising. This can be live action, CG animation, motion design, or even a combination of them all. Our company ethos has always been to create work that always inspires an action. And this can be, calling a phone number, visiting a website, purchasing a product. It all depends on what the client is trying to achieve. But with so much competition in the market, it's getting harder and harder to cut through. So, how do we do this? Well, to begin with, what I'd first like to do is show you two pieces of work that Fall Off the Wall previously created. It's not often that you can really compare apples with apples, but this is pretty close. In this instance, we will pit superhero against a supervillain. Now, in this instance, they were both adverts that were for the same client, they were for the same product, and they were both animations, and they both featured a collaboration with a film franchise. So please, let's first watch Gru versus Batman.
It's our lowest price fiber. So get super fast Sky Fiber. It's super reliable. It's our lowest price fiber. Like including 9 rental for 18 months when you join or recontact Sky TV. Sky Fiber. Start believing better. Hey Batman, prepare to save with super fast Sky Fiber. Catch the UK's lowest price fibre including line rental, exclusively for Sky TV customers at just £20 a month for 18 months. Nice save, Batman. Get the UK's lowest price fibre including line rental, exclusively for Sky TV customers. Search Sky Fibre. Sky, believing better.
Okay, so what we had there was two adverts. So what we'd first like to do is have a quick poll. There should appear as if by magic a page on your screen now to vote. So please, if you could vote on which TV you thought was the most effective and resonated strongest with a buying audience. Was it Batman or was it Gru? Voting is now open.
We're just waiting on a few more people to vote.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give anything away at this stage.
Okay. If you could give me the numbers at the end, though, that'd be grand.
Yeah. That's no problem at all. I just give it 5 more seconds. And I'm going to close it now.
Okay. Results are in, coming in.
Share the results with you. And it was about 50-50 all the way through.
All right, so we got, okay, that's interesting. It's 48% Batman, 52% Crew. So yeah, quite an even split there. Okay, well, we'll be picking that back up later. Okay, so moving on. So to ensure Fall Off the Walls work cuts through and is as effective as possible, we have developed some best practices when creating our direct response video content. So today, what I'm really going to do is sort of unpack a few of the tricks that we use. Firstly, it's well known that video that emotionally connects with audiences on a human level, that provides content they can identify with, and it is far more engaging than those that don't. And engagement is key to the effectiveness of your video, as it results in more actions and increased reach. Content contained within a compelling story that relates to its audience is much more likely to be watched right through to the end. It's also better remembered and shared, and it will also have a greater response to your call to action. And this isn't just a theory. There's actual there's science that supports this. As you'll see on your screen now, there's a very detailed diagram of the human brain, and as you can see, it's split into 3 sections. Now this is quite key. Firstly, we've got the green area, which is, as you can see on the right hand side, the neocortex, and this is our smart brain. It's responsible for intellectual tasks. It's for thought, it's for words, language, it's for creation. So yeah, it's really the smart part of our brain. And then in contrast to that, on the left, you can see the red banana icon. This is the red part of the brain. It is called the reptilian brain. This is responsible for looking after our basic needs, our survival, its safety, its sustenance, its sex, procreation. But the very interesting part is the yellow area, which is called the limbic brain. And this is responsible for love, emotion. It processes our feelings. And this is the most important part about this is that it actually controls our decision making. And this isn't, and we know this without even realizing, just in the language we use. We will say things like, my heart's just not in it. Something doesn't feel right. I've got a good feeling about this. I love Google products. This language, it's coming from the limbic. It's your feeling towards the product. Many people refer to head versus heart, but it's really neocortex versus limbic. But I guess that's not quite as catchy. So, essentially the point being made here is that you can present the reason to purchase to the neocortex, but you must also convince the limbic brain to act for that, for that person to make the decision. So what we found is essentially, if there's too much hard sell in our videos, which, essentially speaking to the neocortex, then the viewer tunes out and doesn't really absorb the message takeout, which weakens your communications in trade. And again, on the flip of that, too much narrative and charm, speaking directly to the limbic, the viewer does engage, but follows the story too much and doesn't get the message takeout. So again, it also weakens its effectiveness in trade. So, we've got to get this balance just right. And that's what we call the sweet spot. This is just the right amount of creative hook to achieve emotional engagement, but it's combined with the best practice DR principles to ensure there is a strong message takeout to deliver maximum return of investment for our clients. To achieve this sweet spot, there are a variety of tricks we use, and some of these I'm about to now share with you. But before we get into that, first of all, with video, we must always remember we are not only working with visuals alone. We've got to consider the script. How well is that crafted? What is the language you use? Is it the right tone of voice for your brand? How is your messaging being landed within the context of your script? And yes, the tone of voice, is it on brand? Is your brand charming and warm, or does it need to have deep, booming gravitas? Again, it all depends on your market, your brand, and this will, dictate which type of VO artist you'll have read your script. Again, there's the visuals. How disruptive are they? How immersive are they? How is the camera movement? How do we visually land the messaging, visually within the context of your video? There's the music and the sound effects. This is 50% of the experience. The type of music, sets the tone of your brand. The SFX can really highlight key areas on screen, which you may want the viewer to be looking at any given point within the edit. And speaking of the edit, how quickly or slow do you cut from scene to scene? Is there enough time for the message recognition? Does the edit induce enough excitement to keep the viewer engaged? Again, you know, so all of these must be considered. We can't just think of videos as purely visuals that we film. So to begin with, I'd like to, when writing our script, so we use a scripting method that we call the trigger line, because we must always remember the audience has very little patience. They're probably not waiting to watch your content, so it's vital to hook them early. Speed is really key. No longer can we expect the viewer to wait until the end of the advert for a conclusion or a punchline or the reveal of your brand. We need to pique their interest immediately to engage. Otherwise, they'll tune out, or even worse, in today's modern age, hit the skip button and your advert will be completely of no impact. So with the trigger line, this is what we use at the very front of our adverts, and it always needs to communicate 4 things in a very efficient time frame. It needs to land the creative hook and theme. So this is to grab the viewer early to engage. This is what's, you know, really got to reach out to the limbic. It has to land the product. So it's, you know, to land in the product or the offer. Again, this is now talking to the neocortex. It has to land the brand. You know, so even if someone does skip your advert, at least there's some brand recognition that, you know, you're still getting your brand out there. And all of these have to connect with the visual that you're seeing on screen. So again, this is pulling it back to the limbic, trying to engage them with the visual narrative. So those 4 things we really try and compress into a matter of seconds at the opening of our adverts. So here's an example of one. This was an advert we did for Sky Sports. The opening line was, "Put yourself in the driving seat with Sky Sports F1 channel." Now, as you can see, the green text is the creative theme and hook. Put yourself in the driving seat. Now, what the point of this advert was, it was at a time when Sky Sports had decided that rather than have to commit to buying the whole package of Sky Sports, you could individually choose just to purchase the channels of the sports that you love. So in this, it was about giving the consumer the control to choose, essentially putting yourself in the driving seat. With Sky Sports, so in the red there, we're landing the brand. F1 channel in blue, that was the product, and then connecting with the visual. In this, as this line is being said, the camera actually swung around Max Verstappen, and we moved inside his crash helmet, literally putting the viewer in the driving seat from Max Verstappen's point of view. So it was in that short space of time, we sort of ticked those 4 boxes. Here's another example. This is you know, one of the adverts we did for Sky Fiber featuring Gru, and again the line was, "Turn on great value with super fast Sky Fiber." In green there, you're seeing the creative theme and the hook, the turn on the great value. It opened with this, you know, epic button. Blue there, the super fast fiber, that was the product, of course, in the red, Sky. And again, as I'm talking about connecting with the visual, as we heard the word "turn on great value with super fast Sky Fiber," we opened with this epic button, which the camera would sweep around as Gru pushed that button, turning on the great value. So again, straight off the bat, this is being landed in a matter of seconds. Another thing we always got to be mindful of is to make sure that we visually unclutter. You know, this allows for clear message and brand takeout. Don't let your messaging get lost if the visual is too busy on screen. So again, it's just try and keep things as uncluttered as possible. Again, we want to oh, sorry, I've skipped one there. So a charm, always add charm. Again, this is what we were talking about earlier about the limbic. You know, ensure your creative has enough charm to be engaging, but still land a brand and messaging to be the obvious hero within the frame. So this visual I've pulled up there, you know, the real hero here is the message, our lowest price fiber. But to add the charm to that, this robot arm at that moment threw this banana, which hit Gru on the head. So it's a bit of charm, but again, we can't get too lost in the charm that your messaging doesn't get the takeout desired. So it's adding the charm, but making sure that still your brand and messaging is the hero. Then don't confuse, but excite. So essentially, this is, don't try to say everything in your 30 seconds or whatever the duration is, because too much messaging actually reduces the takeout. Of course, there are many great things we can say about the product, but if we overload our communications with information, this can actually be detrimental. So don't try to land six messages badly. Land 3 well. Essentially always put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. Less is more. Simplicity, really is key. Also, direct in the eye. What we tend to do a lot is actually use moving assets or glows or a secondary animation, which can tell the viewer where they should be looking on the screen at a certain time. So, for example, the visual I show here was a Christmas advert, and we had this kind of sparkly fairy dust, and that would literally fly and wrap around the typography on screen in sync with what the VO was saying. So it really would highlight which part of the messaging the viewer should be paying attention to at any given time when there was multiple bits of text on screen. Get the big picture. Now, what we found as well is, when possible, to always use full screen content, because it causes more excitement. We engage more with it, especially faces. Harry Kane in this visual, you can really see that the passion in his face. And as a human, I engage with that. But as soon as you take the same image and reduce it down and house it within some kind of graphic box or window, it straight away has less engagement for the viewer. So it's key to always try and keep visually as big as possible. Another thing is to use content people recognize. Big name faces and scenes are very disruptive, whereas unfamiliar content is hard to recall, even if given longer on screen. So, for example, if you're having a movie trailer and it's got Tom Cruise in it, make sure in that trailer you've got some good close-up face shots of Tom Cruise, because that really is what's going to resonate and engage with people. Another thing is that we always try to say it twice, because the message that you may have stated at the front of the advert may very well be forgotten by the time that person has reached the end of the the video. So you've got to so what we tend to do is always give the viewer a summary to remind them of how great your offer is. So you'll potentially have landed 3 great bits of information in the context of your advert, but once we get to the very end, we'll summarize it. And even so, and that will probably also have the secondary animation sweeping over the text in sync with the VO, as I mentioned, a trick earlier. And also sometimes we actually, as you can see in the example there, will tick next to those offers, really landing that there's 3 great things there that you're going to get. And say what you see. This is also really, really key. It's, make sure you see what the viewer sees what they're hearing. Don't have text visually on screen that conflicts with what the voiceover is saying. This otherwise it's the equivalent of rubbing your stomach and patting yourself on the head. You're trying to split the brain to take in 2 bits of information at the same time, and that basically weakens the communication. So keep it simple. It's not rocket science. Just make sure what you're hearing, you're reading. And ensure your call to action is always read out as well as being seen on screen at the end. Don't just rely on having a phone number up there mute. Make sure these things are read out so they really resonate with the person that's watching. Okay, so that was a quick induction to some of the tricks we use when we're crafting our content. So now taking that into account, I'd like to take us back through pick up back where we left off with Gru versus Bats. Now, both of these adverts, as stated at the start, they were a very similar beast. But both of these adverts were put into focus testing to see which one of them actually was the most effective as a direct response marketing video. Now, the sample criteria for the focus testing were all people that were older than 18, It included a mix of Sky TV subscribers, broadband customers, as well as prospects. And there were two separate focus groups in the session. There were two separate focus group sessions. For Lego Batman, there was 318 people in attendance, and for Despicable Me 3, there was 320 people in attendance. We don't have time to go through all of the findings today, but I'll give you a top line on the results. So firstly, with regards to engagement, 75% thought Gru had enough charm to keep them engaged, but they also felt that it clearly landed the brand messaging. 69% thought Batman was engaging, but they did find it a bit too cluttered and confusing. So, even though, they did find Batman enjoyable to watch, definitely Gru won in this heat. So that was one point to Gru there. As regards to branding and messaging recall, after watching Gru, 65% had clear brand and message takeout with less association with the film franchise. After watching Batman, 59% thought Lego Batman was the main recall from viewing the spot. So again, that's now 2 points to Gru. Essentially, yeah, Batman was too overpowering, and I guess the narrative of Batman and the Joker sort of took front stage rather than the landing the messaging, which was stronger in the spot with Gru. Attention drop off. Gru actually had the highest level engagement from start until summary, whereas Batman initially drops off for the first 5 seconds, but then picks up once the Joker arrives, then it stabilizes. So again, it's key to hit straight off the bat. With Gru, from frame one, he was pushing that big button as we were landing that trigger line. Whereas with Batman, if you remember, he was we first introduced him, and then he jumped off the bridge, landed on the train with the Joker. But that happened, only after a few seconds after the advert had started. So, potentially someone could have hit that skip button. So again, that's why it's so key right from the start to hit the floor running. So again, that was 3 points to Gru. And then regards to direct response, buying interest. After watching the Gru spot, 21% had a buying interest in the product, whereas after watching Batman, 18% had a buying interest. So that's 4 out of 4 for Gru, out of the few I've shared today. But essentially, this pattern of Gru winning against Batman was consistent on all criteria in the focus testing. So we can definitely say Gru was the clear winner because it abided best to the best DR practices that I've shared with you earlier in this chat. The conclusion was, from this is that we should always create adverts that are engaging and add charm, but remain disruptive. They should have one theme and use simplified environments to increase brand engagement and message recall. Again, with Gru, it was quite a stripped back white environment, and it was quite simple. Whereas with Batman, we'd built this whole white Gotham city. There was trains. It was visually exciting, but it overpowered the messaging. So having key learnings such as these always helps us also to further fine tune our best practices so we can deliver even better cut through for our clients. Just to round off, I'd like to end with some advice from Winston Churchill on how to write powerful speeches. But I think this also applies to crafting the cut through. Essentially, it's begin strongly, have one theme, use simple language, leave an image in the listener's mind, and end dramatically. So thanks, that's that from me, and I hope you enjoyed that. And I'll now pass you back over to Matthew.
Great stuff. Thank you, Marlon. Okay, so with all the creative techniques to generate success and cut through in a campaign that we've just discussed, we also think it's important to very, very quickly, because I'm conscious of time, chat through getting the most out of what you are creating. So one challenge which is becoming more and more prevalent in today's marketing world is how best to maximize our content. And at Fall of the Wall, we split this requirement into 2 different pillars. We have a modular approach and a modifying process, either through multi-channel or multi-purpose. So what do we mean by modular approach in a below the line targeted marketing sense? In this day and age, more often than not, a marketing team will demand that a campaign and its outputs have the following practical requirements. Is the campaign amendable? Does it have the ability to easily tweak, change, or alter a creative output? Is the campaign agile? The creative output has to be structured in a way which allows a swift and agile refresh process. Is it time efficient, that the time it takes to amend and re-deliver is as efficient as possible? And is it cost effective? Is the cost associated with tweaks, amends, and changes, are the costs all as minimal as possible? This may seem like a bit of a daunting and unachievable task to incorporate these 4 points into an engaging and disruptive video, whilst at the same time not losing any of the resonance and impact of what's being communicated. But we're very much of the mindset that it is possible if the following factors are recognized early and suitably considered. A thorough briefing, have an accurate and signed off brief, which allows us to look toward the marketing and media strategy as soon as possible. A robust strategy, this is where we start to establish a picture, often with the client, of what it is we're communicating, how we're saying it, and when. Pipeline awareness. Early eyes on a pipeline or roadmap allows us to seek out opportunities, a plan of attack, and cost efficiencies when it comes to content itself, and stakeholder sign-offs, understanding the key client stakeholder sign-off stages, and where possible, book these in. That way we reduce hold-up, headache, and repetition. Bearing in mind the creative requirements, the need for tangible and measurable results, and often limiting time and budget deadlines, we've produced over the last decade or so a tried and tested approach to deliver responsive marketing comms to potential or existing customers, which allows a video to stay relevant with a longer lifeline as possible. And it's our modular approach, and here it is in its physical form. This one here reflects the makeup of a 40-second TV spot, where we have bespoke versions for this in the background as well, which feature for longer and shorter TVCs, as well as other channel outputs such as digital and social. This is a tried and tested model, which, like I said, we've been working on for years now, and we've considered with this the psychology of the viewer, the narrative flow of the creative itself, and quite simply the black and white success metrics in terms of campaign results. It's structured with, as you can hopefully see from the diagram there, with interchangeable parts, which can be worked, reworked, reapplied to make particular videos seem fresh and retargeted, giving it greater shelf life. This helps massively when the creative budget doesn't necessarily match up with the media budget, which is more often than not the case. Due to the nature of such things as unique search terms and one-time telephone numbers, we can attribute views to specific videos and particular campaigns when it comes to TVCs. But with digital, we're able to go even further. We're able to see not only the customer journey to purchase, say, but we can also see where people stopped watching, where they interacted, where they watched to completion, making quality content such a serious weapon when it comes to social formats. So in this example, we've kind of just shown one way of refreshing or updating an output. And we can see in this case how changing the messages, for example, in the middle of the ad doesn't alter the main construct of the video, but in changing certain bespoke areas of the construct, such as messaging, we're able to retarget, repurpose, and redeliver the same piece of content, but with a fresh new message, a fresh new line of communication. The look and feel remains the same, the timings remain the same, there's consistency with what's being outputted before, but with changing the message, updating the VO, potentially tweaking the animations or edit, we've created a new campaign output and generated some serious bang for our buck by not having to start from scratch. The same could be applied to the product USPs or the specific offers, for example. We rework, replace, reanimate, and redeliver. Very conscious of time, so I'm trying to kind of flip through these, but onto the second strand to maximizing your content, and that's the modifying process. So what do we mean by modify? Well, as mentioned, for us, this falls into two categories: multi-channel and multi-purpose. As a business which deals with creative marketing briefs daily, we start to see more and more that our clients and brands have a requirement to go to market with campaign comms across multi-channels, and more often than not with a tight turnaround time. Not a problem, right? But these clients were having to go to multiple agencies with duplicate briefs so that TV, digital, print, press, out-of-home channels were all considered and delivered. What this meant was that although you would have marketing managers client side ensuring creative responses are coordinated as closely as possible, the truth is that time, consistency, money, often the brand story, are never able to be completely 100% aligned. What we've discovered is that with the right systems and processes in-house at Fall Off the Wall, we're able to examine a TVC brief and help strategize alongside a media plan, a way where the unique content produced for that singular channel can be utilized across many channels very easily and affordably. Working from a hero output, but considering all the relative channels, enables at the very front end a way of working which we now work to with most of our clients daily. We expose the brief immediately to a key pot of people, usually a motion designer, a creative, a producer, a strategist, an account manager, to discuss all contributing factors, which will allow us to work chronologically through a campaign, but delivering multi-channel creative work simultaneously to one another using the same assets. Now, unless there is a large pot of cash which enables bespoke digital out-of-home, print, social creative, which I very much doubt there is, assets, narrative, look and feel, sequences can literally be lifted and shifted from an original source and tweaked in terms of format to whatever channels are necessary. Obviously, we have challenges to consider with switching channels from, say, a TV output to a digital platform, as we now need to impact, say, in the first 5 seconds. We need to get the brand up front ASAP. It needs to work with and without audio. But in ensuring a consistency of campaign and utilization of a hero creative and its original assets, time and money are the real beneficiaries here. Through our experience here, we've seen that upfront planning and the utilization of key assets, which have already had through the line considerations apply from that day one briefing, means that working campaign times can be slashed by up to 75% and budgets by up to 50%. We're talking weeks saved and a huge chunk of cash. It's very much a test and learn approach. We need to keep finding new ways, new solutions of tackling more and more complicated campaign requirements in ever shortening time and budget allocations. But as well as multi-channel, we're looking also at multi-purpose here. As well as looking at what channels we can utilize, we need to consider the real purpose. Often in marketing, the demand of a brief is either to gain acquisition uplift or increase in client retention. Occasionally, we do have a dual challenge where a client's business business has to immediately address two challenges of equal importance: sales and retention. Previously, this would be answered with two different briefs, two separate occasions, often with numerous agencies. But if these challenges are raised and considered at the initial briefing stage, a campaign creative can be produced whereby a simple change in, say, voiceover, on-screen copy, duration, the offers, call to action, and the platform, we can achieve effective results from utilizing the same content, the same bespoke assets. And once again, we create this brand consistency, this clarity for the customer, whilst at the same time attacking several purposes. This can become even more powerful when targeted to specific customers or prospects using behavioral habits, geography, demographic. I mean, just to round up, a quick example of this is with a client of ours called the Gym Group, which we actually worked on with Receptional, who you'll hear from in a short while. Originally, they came to us needing to solve an issue with retention and the fact that a huge percentage of new customers leave after one visit to the gym, and an even higher percentage leave after just 2 or 3 visits. At briefing stage, we also discovered that in Manchester and Leeds, they were having acquisition challenges with competition rife amongst their key spending demographics and similar positioned gyms. With some early consideration and some tweaks to format and language, we were able to use the same content produced for the retention campaign and repurpose this very quickly into a new acquisition campaign. The cost was literally peanuts as we considered these challenges and obstacles from the get-go. So the client allowed us to demonstrate to them how this should and could be executed. And we were given the green light to do so. And they both were a huge success in terms of retention and acquisition, and both answered the metric targets highlighted at the front end. As a result, we then worked, as I said, with Receptional, getting these outputs across social channels and targeting those Manchester and Leeds demographics in particular, which again saw huge results in terms of views, awareness and traffic. I believe Matt from Receptional will go through these results with you a little later, but it was another example where beating up that brief and exhausting all possible business requirements up front meant that multi-purpose channels and challenges were able to be successfully addressed across several platforms at the same time. We strongly believe that the ad and content world will never sit still, and as an industry, it really doesn't get any easier. We just get better. We have to. To conclude, creating top quality content on a regular basis is not an easy job for anyone, especially if you're of a small to medium modest sized agency. Every piece of content we produce is precious. You put time and effort into researching it, writing it up, creating visuals, producing the content, outputting it to channels. So it's important to make the most of it and generate the best results you can. To do this, you need to consider all the different content formats available, work out how it can be repurposed, decide very early on who your target audience is, and as early as possible, put a solid content strategy and media plan in place and keep to it. I think that's it, Justin. I think it's over to you now, where we can hear from Matt.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matthew Marr. And that was great. There was plenty of content there to stimulate the neocortex, but also to tickle the limbic part of the brain too. So thank you very much. What I would say is, if you've got any questions and you're listening in, then do send those questions through to Alan Green, and we'll answer those at the end. What I'm now going to do is pass over to my colleague Matt Laughlin, who is going to take over presenting. Let me just switch that across.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Certainly can, Matt.
Excellent. Okay, and you can see my screen as well.
I can, yes. So
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Justin. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Firstly, thanks to Justin and thanks to both Matt and Marlon at Fall Off the Wall as well. I have to say, although the Gru ad won, I certainly love that Batman advert. I think it looked fantastic. So I'm going to be looking at a couple of things this morning. Firstly, why you should be using video ads at the current time and what the opportunity is. But then also following on from Fall Off the Wall's presentation there, how you can leverage great quality content in the right way as well. I think just going back to the poll at the beginning that Justin ran, I think if memory serves me correctly, about 38% of you were not using video ad at all, with about 28% using it a little, and I think there was just 4% using it all the time. I think just kind of looking broadly at all of the businesses out there, what we're actually seeing is that some of those figures are even quite high at the lower end. I think definitely most people are not using any kind of online video at the minute, and certainly those that are using it all the time are definitely in the single figure percentage towards the lower end as well. So there's certainly a lot of opportunity out there, and we'll run you through some of that at the minute as well. So if I can get my slides to change, there we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. So firstly, this is an image of my son in the delivery room. Okay, maybe not, I'm just kidding. This is actually taken from the Drum Magazine's September 2018 edition, as I'm sure some of you saw, and I just wanted to share this with you because I thought it was a pretty powerful image. We all know that, of course, things are changing, consumers are changing, lifestyles, habits, and certainly the way we consume and engage with content are changing as well. But sometimes I think it takes an image like this to really stop and make us think about those changes. And I think what we're seeing at the minute in terms of changes is that online video is, we're consuming an enormous amount of online video. But for advertisers, that online video is far more accessible to brands, both large and small, in a way that it just hasn't been previously. So I think, looking at more traditional mediums such as TV, it was kind of the domain more so of the larger advertiser and those with bigger budgets, whereas now there's an opportunity for everyone, large and small, to leverage online video. Kind of reflecting the changes in consumer engagement with content and video content as well, we're seeing changes in the ad platforms themselves. So just focusing today on the Google Ads platform rather than the various social options and some of the more advanced programmatic options. Looking at the main one, Google Ads, so what we've actually seen in the last 3 months is a shift from Google AdWords to Google Ads, essentially a rebrand in that platform. But the reasoning behind that really is that it's sort of reflecting the changes that we're seeing with advertisers themselves. So we're moving away from words to essentially audiences. So moving from keyword targeting to audience targeting, and the change in the ad platforms is just really reflecting that change in consumer behavior. So whilst the underlying products essentially on those platforms are the same, it's just kind of an indication of where we're all headed, and the fact that we're seeing a growth in display and in video as we're able to attribute that more so over time as well. But what are we seeing specifically on YouTube? Well, as some of you are probably aware, YouTube as a Google product is now the world's second biggest search engine behind only its big brother Google. Each month about 1.8 billion of us are logged in. And notice that's the logged in aspect. There's many more that aren't logged in as well. In terms of content, we're viewing about 5 billion videos each day, and each minute a staggering 300 hours of HD quality content is being uploaded to YouTube as well. So there's an enormous amount of inventory out there that we could potentially be advertising against. Obviously not all of it will be right for us, but there is certainly a lot out there, as we'll show, that can fit a lot of advertisers' needs. And I think when we couple this with some of the statistics that, again, I'm sure some of you have seen recently, such as that Google's data shows that by 2020, video will make up about 90% of the global data traffic, with digital video ad spending projected to hit about 42 billion worldwide in 2020. I think it's clear to see that we're really starting to see that growth, and now's the time really to get on board with things whilst it's still more cost effective as well. So what about TV? Well, I think sort of stating the obvious, TV is no longer the only source of video entertainment. And looking at kind of younger demographic, 18 to 49-year-olds, they're either light viewers of TV. More than half of those are either light viewers of TV, or they're not subscribing to TV services at all. For us, though, that certainly doesn't mean that TV content and TV screens are on the way out, and it's not a question, as some would have you believe, of versus either or with digital, but more how can digital video and TV work together, and how can you as advertisers then produce and leverage content most cost effectively that fits your objectives across both TV and digital video as well. Just looking at 3 trends that are playing out on YouTube that illustrate how people's definition and expectations of video entertainment are changing. Firstly, I think it's, as we touched on a moment ago, really, I think it's clear to see that TV content is definitely here to stay, but just the way that we're watching it and viewing it and engaging with it is changing. So as an example of that, we're spending twice as much time watching official TV channels on YouTube as we did a few years ago. And TV itself, interestingly, is the fastest growing screen for watching YouTube content as well, and that's grown by over 70% in the past year. I think we at home certainly use our TV a lot and use the YouTube and Netflix apps on there, and I think that the growth of smart TVs is helping us to do that quickly, coupled with better internet speeds, etc. as well. And the figures are supporting that in terms of 7 out of 10 of us are watching YouTube on TV screens during prime time as well. And I think that's the key thing for me, is it's during prime time. So essentially, not only are we finding content entertaining, but we're then seeking content about that content as well, seeking a deeper understanding of what we're watching. In terms of what we mean by that, so just taking an example from summer 2017, so essentially, when Game of Thrones was last on, what we saw was that for every hour that people spent watching Game of Thrones on live TV, there were an additional 30 minutes of watch time for Game of Thrones related videos on YouTube during that time as well. Pretty staggering, really. 2 times growth in watch time of entertainment, explainer videos for Game of Thrones, people looking at cast and character videos, and also preview and prediction videos as well. So I think, again, with a TV show as popular as Game of Thrones is, there's a lot of people competing for ad space for TV shows such as that. But again, there's an opportunity to be leveraging a lot of the secondary content online around Game of Thrones and other TV shows that fit our audiences. But also, what's driving that growth in the sort of explainer videos and the behind the scenes bits and pieces? Fear of missing out, FOMO. As you can see on the slide, FOMO is real. So essentially, what is FOMO? As I said, the anxiety that an interesting or exciting event is happening elsewhere, and often that's driven by social media posts. But because of that, we're then watching more related to what we missed, videos, highlights and scene compilations, and episode and movie recaps as well. Just as an example of that, going back to, I think we took the screenshot in early September this year, just before we ran this presentation at Google HQ. And just for a search from for Game of Thrones related videos, we can see that from the top 3 videos, the top video itself, the most badass scenes compilation from Game of Thrones, in only 3 months of that video being up, it has 3.3 million views, which is pretty staggering. The top 10 moments of season 7 then has 3.2 million views from a year's worth of data, but again, it's a staggering number of views for just a few pieces of content there as well. But what about ads themselves? Well, again, as I'm sure many of you have already seen, ads are already targeted to videos. So in this example that you can see on screen now, we can see examples of Google Shopping ads displaying next to video content. So essentially what that means is that the merchants that are using Google Shopping and have selected search partners are then displaying on YouTube itself. So in this instance, we can see Wayfair.com advertising their products against different video content. I'm sure many of you have also seen display ads targeted to YouTube as well. So we can see from the overlay ad there targeting relevant video content, and we can also see the ad to the top right that's also targeting home renovation based content as well. But for us, the question really is, where are all the video ads? I'm sure that many of you have noticed that it's a lot of the same suspects advertising online, people like Grammarly and others that are really dominating, and there's not much variety to a lot of it in terms of the video advertisers that are out there at the minute. For us, it's an opportunity. I think, video is fast, we're busy, we like videos. As we said, we're consuming enormous amounts of video content on the go and on desktop as well. And I think this image taken from Facebook says it quite nicely. In the time it takes us to read this, we could have told our story on mobile video. Crucially for us as well, it's very cost effective for now. As I said, this really is accessible to advertisers large and small at the current time. But no doubt, as we see more and more people entering the market for it, the cost will increase quite quickly. Just going back to what Matt mentioned a minute ago with Fall Off the Wall and the gym group. So an example of the campaigns run for them just in June, July this year across 2 locations for Leeds and Manchester. We actually saw a cost per view. Essentially, that means somebody that's watched the whole 30-second ad, not skipped the ad at all. The cost per view figures there were coming in at just 2 pence. So we were able to generate over 288,000 views just for those 2 locations, which equated to over almost 3,500 hours of view time at a cost per hour of just £1.65 in those locations. So vast amounts of brand exposure that we can then use and apply to remarketing lists, as we'll explain shortly, for use in search display and potentially for other video as well, but very, very cost effective. But how do we set up campaigns and manage them in the right way to get the most from them? Well, getting it right involves a few things. So firstly, targeting the right audiences. Secondly, using engaging purpose-built content, as the guys at Fall Off the Wall have already touched on. Then leveraging the audiences with display and video remarketing, in addition to search remarketing. Then targeting our campaigns based on customer match data where available, so uploading customer data and then using that to include or exclude audiences. And then using unique offers to track and attribute for video as well across all of those different areas, so that we can then essentially put a pounds and pence figure on the actual returns of the initial video ads themselves. So just looking at some of the targeting options that are available then, and kind of starting at the top at 12 o'clock and working our way around. So firstly, we can target video ads based on topics themselves. So for example, sports and games, health and fitness, etc. Some of the more interesting developments in market audiences, so essentially targeting those that are lower in the purchase funnel. So their search behavior, there's the actual searches themselves and their browsing behavior of an individual user suggests that they are lower in the purchase funnel for a particular product and service, and we can target those with video ads. We can target based on affinity audiences. So for example, the example on screen we have is sports fans. We can target based on location, so that could be as simple as country targeting, and it could be down to postcode and radius targeting as well. So we can be very targeted on that front. There's additional options in terms of household income, parental status, and then of course age and gender data in addition to device data. We can target certain video placements across Google's display network. So it may be that we wish to target video placements on, say, Sky Sports or Sky News or something like that, or indeed other placements. We can target specific YouTube channels if they fit with our audience and what we're looking to, and those that we're looking to reach. And then finally, audiences themselves. So essentially those that would include those that have previously visited our site, they have watched our videos previously, or maybe they're audiences that that we have created based on certain other points as well to define that. And it can include customer match audiences, as I mentioned a minute ago as well, which I will come on to. So without going through each of those in great detail, just some of the more interesting options that are available in terms of targeting. So firstly, video display and search remarketing. So essentially reaching our viewers based on their past interactions with our website and videos in three ways. So we can take pools of video viewers, those that have seen our ad and not converted, and we can then remarket to those in search with our search campaigns. We can use display advertising to reach them as they browse third-party websites across the internet. And we can also follow up with additional video ads that are targeted solely to those people that have seen our initial videos, just to create a kind of sequence of videos based on certain responses. So looking at customer match audiences then. So as I mentioned, we're able to upload data on our customers. Depending on what we have, we can upload, say, email addresses, but also telephone numbers, mailing addresses. And we know that Google is expanding this further to include additional lists that we can upload to essentially target customers that we know, or to exclude customers that we already know for whatever reason, or to reach similar customers as well. So it can be useful for targeting past clients, for example, to try and kind of revive previous clients. We can use it for upselling or cross-selling to, say, existing clients if we're looking to get them buying more products or services. It can be very useful for loyalty clubs and program activity as well, in segmenting audiences. And we can also use it to expand our existing customer base as well by sort of accessing Google's ability to create similar audiences based on the profile of our other audience lists. For those of you that are perhaps more familiar with Facebook advertising, that would similar audiences are essentially lookalike audiences. They're one and the same thing. So as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a shift from keywords to audiences essentially over time, and the ability to target different audiences is really ramping up quite quickly. So another interesting example of kind of the audience targeting that we have available now includes what are known as life events. So for those of you that are familiar with this, it's essentially, or less familiar with this, it's essentially targeting those that are about to go through or have just been through a major sort of milestone within their life. I think rewinding about a year, I think we had just 3 options available to us, which included college or university graduation, marriage, so getting married or just being married, and then moving, have just moved or about to move. And then more recently, Google has added the ability to target those that are looking for a change of job, purchasing a home, potentially retiring, creating a business, renovating a home, or even getting a new pet. So you can even target those that are adding a cat or a dog to a household soon or have just done so as well. So some of them are very, very granular indeed. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot more of these to follow in time as well. So with the way that the wind is blowing, with privacy concerns, and with the potential or potentially a decreased reliance on remarketing lists, what we'll see is that audience lists, which are anonymized pools of essentially users, will just increase over time. In addition to this, we have in-market audiences, which I mentioned a moment ago as well. So in-market audiences, just to recap, so we can essentially target those that are lower in the purchase funnel for a particular product or service. And they're identified based on their search behavior and based on their browsing behavior as well. So Google now has hundreds of these for us to access from different industries. In the particular example you can see on screen, this is for an automotive client that we have. And essentially what it's showing you via the index column is the likelihood that somebody is next to the general population to be in the market for a particular vehicle or a particular vehicle type in this instance. So for example, looking at the second row, that particular audience that is suggesting to us there for saloon cars is 23.8 times more likely than the general population to be in the market for a saloon car based on their search behavior and based on their browsing behavior as well. We can then take these audiences and layer them onto other audiences as well. So we don't just have to use these and apply these to video-based activity. We can use these in addition to the other targeting methods that we've already mentioned. So to be doubly sure, we could target those looking for a saloon car, but they're also within a certain location, of a certain gender, of a certain age, etc., as well. So we can still be hyper-targeted with these and we can still layer them. But again, what we would say with these is expect more of these in-market audiences to appear over time, given the way that things are going. But what about the actual ads themselves? Well, there's various ad types available to you. You are able to contact YouTube directly to do home page takeovers. There are TrueView for shopping ads. There are Outstream ads. There's others, quite a lot of others that are actually being tested. But what we want to focus on today are the ones that are available within the Google Ads platform to every advertiser, large and small. And of those, just looking at the 3 main types, but focusing really on 2 of them. So there are 3 main types, as you can see on screen: TrueView in-stream ads, TrueView discovery ads, and bumper ads. Now we'll look at all 3 of those briefly, but the main ones that we want to focus on that we've been seeing great results with are really TrueView in-stream, option 1, and then the bumper ads, kind of option 3. And we'll look at how you can use those together as well. So firstly, just looking at the bumper ads then, again, I'm sure that we've all seen these online. These essentially are 6-second unskippable ads that allow us to broadly reach people with a short and hopefully memorable message as well. So they can play before, during, or after a video. Typically they will play before, and we pay for those using what's known as a CPM bidding, so cost per 1,000 impressions bidding. So we pay essentially each time our ad is shown 1,000 times. Bumper ads can be tricky to get right, given that they're only 6 seconds long. But if you can get that messaging within the 6 seconds right, then they're especially effective on mobile devices where they get a lot of playtime. So TrueView in-stream ads, again, I'm sure that we're all familiar with these. These play on YouTube and across Google Display Network as well, mainly before other videos, but they can display during or after other videos as well. The difference with these ads is that after 5 seconds, we have the option to skip the ad. And we're only charged if somebody doesn't skip the ad and they watch 30+ seconds of the ad, or they interact with the video itself. So what we mean by that essentially is that they're clicking on either a call to action overlay within the ad itself, which we'll explain in a minute, or a companion banner if you're on desktop or tablet devices. and that would be it essentially. So they're watching 30 seconds and they're clicking one of the clickable elements that's available. With the in-stream ads, we get to choose what we want to pay for a view. So it's what's known as cost per view bidding. So you can set a cost per view of 5, 6, 9 pence or £1 or whatever it may be, depending on the audience that you wish to reach and how competitive it is. But what we're actually seeing at the minute, just going back to the gym group example for Leeds and Manchester, is that when we were broadly targeting a sort of a wider demographic of males and females with interests in health and fitness, etc., we were getting cost per views of between 1 and 2 pence. So it's very, very cost effective. Even though we'd set a cost per view of around 10 pence initially, we were generating plenty of traffic far below even that limit. We're a big fan of these ads, I think it's fair to say, because as you can probably tell, it's a pretty low risk option for advertisers. If somebody's skipping the ad, we're not paying. If they're not clicking the ad, we're not paying. And then finally, video discovery ads. So essentially these allow us to promote our videos in different places, so next to YouTube videos or on the YouTube search results themselves, or on the mobile homepage for YouTube as well. Those ads I'm sure you will have seen, they are identified as ads. You can see that they have a thumbnail image which is customizable, and custom text as well, which we can add. And then we're only charged essentially if a viewer does choose to click that ad. In terms of what these are useful for, they can be great for building YouTube channel engagement and views. So if you're looking to build your presence on YouTube first before you get your message out there, this can be great for getting people to engage with your YouTube channel and video content initially. Video ad formats. So we've looked at 3 different video ad formats. How might they work together? I think it certainly depends on the objective and the content, but typically we would use a combination of bumper and TrueView in-stream ads. Why? Well, essentially, as you can probably see from the image itself on screen, bumper ads can tease a brand announcement before the longer TrueView in-stream ads can then tell the full story. Bumpers can then amplify a message working with longer form ads, or they can echo a message based on remarketing lists as well. So as I said, it really does depend on the objective and the content that you've got available, but we can certainly help you with that if that's of interest. So call to action overlays, as I mentioned a minute ago, so we are charged if somebody does click a call to action overlay, even if they're not watching 30 seconds of the ad. Just to give an example of a call to action overlay, you can see the example for Grammarly on screen, which shows the grey box with the Grammarly logo, the get Grammarly message with the Grammarly display URL, and then the actual call to action on the button. It's free. We can choose to add these or not to our video ads. We would always recommend that they are added. It's quite surprising to see how many video advertisers don't add these. I think where we get an opportunity to try and get people to click through to our websites to a particular landing page, then we should certainly take it. And with that, I would say that means customizing all the available elements of that. So the text within the call to action overlay, the button itself, and the actual, and being sure to add a logo as well that's consistent. Companion banners. So on screen, you can see an example again from Grammarly of a companion banner that is appearing to the top right of the video there. So again, we have the option to add companion banners or not. If you choose not to add it, Google will automatically show a video wall. So we would definitely recommend that you do create a custom image to display next to your video ad, because that banner will then remain after the video ad is finished, and that viewer then continues to watch the content that they've come to YouTube for. This also presents a great opportunity to tie in a unique offer as well. So I think one of the problems that we have with video advertising, and one of the reasons for the slow adoption and slow take up from advertisers is essentially an attribution issue, which has been a headache for a lot of us for a long time. But these banners allow us an opportunity to mention a unique offer that is also mirrored or mentioned initially in the video ad itself. So just going back to the example from the gym group that we mentioned, for the 2 locations that we had for both Manchester and Leeds, we had a unique promotional code for each. Find your fit and go live it, if I remember correctly, and they were unique to the individual video ads for those locations. Now, from those videos, if somebody had watched those videos, we could then display remarketing ads, etc., and companion banners with those videos that also reflected those promotional codes that are unique to that campaign for that location. So if somebody then goes on to sign up, we know that it all began with that video because we're consistently mentioning that offer for that particular location. So end screens as well within video ads. So at the end of a video ad, in the last 5 to 20 seconds of that video ad, we can add end screens that allow us to do a couple of things. So firstly, we could allow clicks out to our website itself, which is the best available option, we would say. Or we can direct viewers to other videos on our YouTube channel. Whilst the first option, essentially allowing those to click out to your website, is the best option, and we would recommend that for driving conversions, you do need to be a part of the YouTube Partner Program to essentially enable that, which means that you have to have a certain limit in the number of subscribers to your channel and a number of hours of video views over the last year to hit those thresholds. But for those of you that perhaps don't have that, we would certainly recommend that promoting other videos or your YouTube channel is second best to not having any end screens at all. Just looking quickly at brand safety then, brand safety. So I'm sure we've all seen in the news different examples of video content that's been and display content that's been placed in less than desirable locations for brands. I think it's fair to say that Google has put in a lot of work to ensure that we are displaying ads in the right places and against content with which we are happy. Just looking at some of the options available to us as advertisers. So firstly, we can select a level of inventory that we're happy to display against, so limited, standard, or expanded. As you can see on screen, there are some differences in those. By default, standard inventory would be selected. So if you wanted to limit that, if you were worried about safety, then you would need to manually change that. Or perhaps if you're less concerned, then of course you could go the other way and expand that inventory as well. On top of that, we can then layer on some further filtering. So you can see some examples on screen of content that we can exclude if it doesn't fit with our brand messaging and where we're prepared to display ads. So for example, it may be that we don't want to display on embedded YouTube videos or games, or we can apply digital content labels as well in the same way that we would for films. So displaying to all audiences, the general audiences, or perhaps excluding mature audiences, for example, as well. And then as an extension of that, so whilst you may do those, or you're probably more likely to do those before you sort of activate your campaigns, whilst the campaigns are running themselves, you will certainly then need to make exclusions as time progresses. So I'm sure from the image on screen, the parents amongst you will be familiar with some of this content, which seems to saturate large portions of YouTube. Videos related to Peppa Pig and Baby Shark and other things that children and young toddlers love. Of course, whilst children and toddlers love this content, it does quite often they are viewing this via our profiles. So we do need to manually review the placements that we're displaying on, just to ensure that we're checking where our videos are, our ads are, and that we're excluding those over time as well. So just looking at landing pages then. So we mentioned about dedicated landing pages. Just going back to the attribution challenge that we touched on a minute ago. So one of the biggest challenges that we have is, of course, applying a pounds and pence return figure to our video activity. As marketers, one of the best things that we can do in setting up our campaigns and planning our campaigns is to create a dedicated landing page and a unique promotional code where possible for this campaign, as I said, that runs across video and then across any search, display, and potentially other video remarketing that we run, with that promotional code mentioned in our banners, potentially in our call to action overlays and things as well, just to ensure that users can easily spot that and easily access that. But then on the landing page itself, where we are driving clicks via the companion banners, via the call to action overlays on the video ads, and then via the remarketing activity, be it search or display activity, we need to ensure that that offer is mentioned on the landing page as well, and where possible, we would say auto-populated on that page as well. I think the challenge with offers a lot of the time is that all too often we see that people will mention promotional codes. I think firstly, they're not always the most memorable promotional codes. And then secondly, if they're not then mentioned on the page, the user forgets it and they make a decision in a fraction of a second just to click away, and you've lost that engagement, which is not what we want. So in terms of our recommendations then, in terms of what we recommend, just to summarize, so the guys at Fall Off the Wall have spoken about content, but if you're looking for some inspiration on content, YouTube will provide you some good inspiration. If you look at what people are actually searching for, you'll see how many views are next to that content. So we spoke to a driving school recently who were looking for suggestions on content to create, to add value to different audiences, and we could just see from searching on YouTube that there are millions of views for people looking at practical and theory-based driving tests, for example. Of course, they could just essentially copy and create their own version of that, but we're looking to create something unique and with a twist on it as well. Using a combination of bumper and in-stream ads to amplify and echo our message. So as I said, we favor both bumper and in-stream ads for a couple of reasons. Bumper will get us large amounts of exposure, and we'll get that short, sharp message in front of people. And then the in-stream ads allow us to tell the longer story over time and in a very cost-effective way. The third point, using companion banners to drive clicks. So always uploading your own custom banners to drive clicks, and as we mentioned, displaying the offer that is reflected in the video as well. Using end cards to link out, if possible, where possible, to your website or to other videos. And then using call to action overlays to drive clicks as well. Take the opportunity to get that user on site and converting. And then setting the basic targeting options based on your target audience as well. In addition to that, layering on further targeting options, so topics, placements, as we mentioned, in addition to customer match audiences, which can be used to include and exclude different audiences, potentially in-market audiences where they're available for different products and services. If they're not available for your sector yet, I think it would be fair to say that they quite probably will be very soon, given that how quickly they're growing in number. Limit the inventory accordingly, depending on kind of how brand safety conscious you are, I guess, at the current time. Review placements and exclude as necessary over time. So as I said, it really is just a case of running the campaigns, and there's a lot of checks and balances you can implement to ensure that you set everything up in the right way. But as the campaign does run, you do need to keep an eye on it, not just for optimization purposes, but also just to ensure that you're getting the placements that you want, and you're excluding those that you don't want as you go. And then using the video remarketing list in search and display. So as I said, tying all of this activity together. If you're spending the money to create the video content and then promote it, you definitely need to spend the money to leverage those audiences in both search and display based on remarketing lists of viewers of your video ads. And then, as we mentioned, include a unique offer in the video ads and in the search and display ads as well, just to tie that activity back. So if you are getting the conversions in a week, a month's time from display ad activity, that you know that if they're using that offer, they originally came from your video ads and they originally saw your video ads. And then finally, creating a dedicated landing page for the activity with the offer on page, and ideally auto-populated, just to make it as simple as possible for the users and just to help you with the attribution of your marketing activity as well. That's all from me. I think Alan and Justin have been populating some questions as we've gone on. So
indeed we have, Matt. So yeah, thank you very much. And what I'll do is just kind of unmute Matthew and Marlon as well, so that hopefully they can come back in again. But thank you, Matt, for that, for all of those fantastic thoughts there. What's clear to me is that YouTube is a fantastic opportunity at the moment. From some of the figures that you were showing, advertising is incredibly cost effective, certainly more cost effective than than search advertising, which can be very expensive, albeit a different model, and a lot more cost effective than than traditional display ads online. And I think it's an opportunity that a lot of marketers are grappling with. So I think to see all of that content put together is fantastic. I'm conscious though that although we spent just over an hour talking about kind of the opportunity, that there is vast amounts to cover, and to most people in the audience it's going to be relatively new. And so one of the things that we've said is that if it's useful to have a conversation with any of our team after the webinar's finished today, then we'd be happy to do so. And so I've just put a quick poll up there, and if you're able to complete that, if you're interested in a follow-up conversation, then please do let us know. So please go ahead and vote on that. And in the meantime, if you've got any questions, please send them through to my colleague Al Green. I've got a couple that have come in already, and so I don't know, Marlon, Matthew, are you hearing me and able to speak?
Yeah, we got you here.
Excellent. So the first question, because I think this is particularly relevant given that Matt spoken a lot about YouTube, but obviously video can be used in lots of different channels. So I've got a question from Rachel, which is about how do you effectively optimize a piece of content across different channels? So Facebook or Instagram or all the other options that are out there.
Optimizing across other channels. Well, I think first of all, it's the planning. Before you even begin creating your content, you've got to clearly determine what channels it's going to be seen on, because that will clearly influence how you create your content. For example, if you're making a video for TV or YouTube, but at the planning stage, you already know that it's going to also be put out on mobile channels in a portrait format, then you already have to plan for this right at the front, because it can completely influence how you frame your compositions, making sure, and also your typography, because of course as soon as you're going to watch it in a different format, you won't have the width on screen. So if you've shot everything with one person on the left of the frame and the other person on the far right of the frame, once you try and watch that in a portrait mode, they're going to be cropped out of shot. So and that can be quite an expensive problem to solve later down the line if you haven't thought about this at the start. So that's one key thing with optimizing is forward thinking. Where is this going to be seen? How is it going to be seen? And then attacking creating that content in a way that's going to cover these bases. Because one thing that we've reports show is that actually people don't like necessarily turning their phone, for example, to landscape to watch something. So if you can deliver your content in digital mobile channels in portrait or square formats, then you are going to get a much better viewing figures. But again, it's not just simply about reformatting it. It's also seeing these as new individual pieces of work that that you can create from the same source content. So, for example, if you've got a 30-second TV advert, that's great for TV. That can be great on YouTube. But with online rules, you need to consider shorter durations, like 10 seconds, for example. So as we've touched on earlier, for the content on the digital channels, you want to land the brand quicker, you want to get into your story quicker. Again, I think the key thing is that you should see your video content not as one untouchable narrative, but instead see it as a collection of assets to be used and repurposed, following the best practices for the platforms that it will sit on. I hope that helps.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I think it does. What came across in your presentation was the importance of planning. I think it's it seems to me that these are big projects with larger budgets, and so making sure there's a really clear plan and a brief from the outset was certainly one of the takeaways that I would pick up from today. I've got another question for you, Marlon, just while you're on the line. I think we'll make it the last question because I'm conscious of time. And I know we haven't really talked about kind of organic optimization of YouTube content, but there's a question from Stevie about subtitles. And Stevie's read that up to 85% of campaigns have the audio turned off, which I think is right. I often watch Facebook content with the audio turned off if I'm on my phone. And so Stevie asks, do you recommend adding subtitles to the video if there's dialogue on the advert?
In short, yes. Because that will very quickly allow the viewer to understand what your advert is about, and and the messaging, because you've got to consider the person. They might be out and about, they might be in a noisy environment, they might not have headphones, so so rather than it essentially just being pictures, I think having the subtitles can, in a sense, in themselves, be a trigger to pique interest for someone to actually click on your advert and listen to it. But I think it can go actually deeper than just subtitles. I think when you're re-optimizing a piece of content for in these channels, you should consciously think about adding more graphics and text, because this can create an extra dimension of visual interest, and to further catch the attention. So for example, if you had an advert for a car, maybe the original advert didn't really have much on-screen graphics, but in your your digital version of this advert, you may want to be landing much more on-screen graphics showing the the great USPs of this car, and be more playful with the graphics, I think, is the key thing. So you can not just think about subtitles in the sense of a foreign film, but you can actually be creative with these to further pique the interest and engage.
Yep, that sounds like a good tip in terms of including kind of the content within the video already. So thank you very much, Marlon, for answering those questions. I've got one final one, which has come in from Georgie on any tips on organic optimization for I'm assuming for YouTube, but I think this will apply more broadly. And so in kind of 30 seconds, what I would say is that the way that YouTube is going from an optimization point of view to in terms of getting more people to watch your video, is that the more people that watch your video, the more the more that YouTube will show your video. So it comes back to that kind of making sure that your YouTube videos are fantastic content, and then to some extent Google uses machine learning to show that video to a number of different audiences, and the more that video gets clicked upon and the more that it gets watched, then the more it will get shown. And so the tip for me is to make sure your thumbnail for your video on YouTube is really strong and enticing, because I think if the thumbnail gets clicks and then the videos gets watched, then it will get shown to a broader audience. So that would be my tip for organic optimization on YouTube. So I think what we'll do is we'll finish off there. And say thank you very much to our speakers for today with some fantastic content. Thank you very much to you, the audience, for coming along and listening. What I will do is I will just put my email address there into the chat box. If you've got any questions or thoughts or wanted to follow up with any of the team from Reception or Fall Off the Wall, then just copy that email address now and drop me a note, and I'll point you in the right direction. And happy to do that over the next few days. So, but otherwise, I would just say. Thank you very much for attending. Our next webinar will be in a few weeks' time, and we'll be looking at what's new in Google advertising. And there's lots and lots of new stuff that has come out over the last few weeks. So that should be a really nice webinar as well, and we will send through details within the next couple of weeks. But yeah, thank you for now, and goodbye.